The great hall was silent. Ambassador Zexthari stood at the center of the room, her crystal body shaking with fear. She had come to the Galactic Council with the worst news possible. Her people, the Valdorians, were dying. "Please," she said through the translator device. "My people need help. The Krellians are coming. They destroy everything. They eat entire planets." The alien leaders around the room looked at each other but said nothing. Some turned away. Others checked their data tablets like they had more important things to do. Zexthari's crystal skin grew darker with despair. "We have tried to fight them. We lost 30 ships yesterday. They have 1,000 more coming. Our children are hiding in caves while their parents die above ground." Counselor Yithmarin from the Altarian Federation finally spoke. "Ambassador, we understand your pain, but the Krellians are too strong. They have destroyed 47 star systems. What can we do?" "Fight with us," Zexthari begged. "Send your ships. Send your soldiers. Anything." The Silicon Collective's representative made electronic sounds that meant no. "We can take your refugees. We can give your people homes on our worlds. But we cannot fight the Krellians." War Speaker Groth Manus from the mighty Thorian Empire shifted in his chair. Even his warrior people were afraid of the bug-like invaders. "The Krellians do not fight like normal armies. They work together like a hive of insects. When you kill one, 10 more take its place. They cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be scared. They only hunger." Zexthari felt her hope dying. The most powerful civilizations in the galaxy were too frightened to help. Her people would become just another meal for the endless swarm. Then a new voice spoke from the back of the room. "The Earth Federation will help you." Every head in the chamber turned. Admiral Jake Morrison walked down the aisle between the seats. He was not tall for a human, but something about the way he moved made him seem dangerous. His blue eyes were cold and calculating. Behind him walked Colonel Lisa Harper. She carried a small computer and was already looking at battle reports from the Valdorian system. Her red hair was pulled back tight and her green eyes studied the data like a hunter tracking prey. Counselor Yithmarin made a sound like laughing. "Admiral Morrison, humans have only had faster-than-light travel for 3 years. You know nothing about fighting in space. The Krellians will destroy your ships before you can fire a single shot." Morrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Maybe. Or maybe you don't know humans as well as you think." Dr. Ryan Phillips stepped forward. He was Earth's expert on alien biology. His brown eyes were bright with intelligence as he spoke. "We have been watching the Krellians for months. We know how they think. We know how they fight. And we know how to beat them." The alien leaders made sounds of disbelief. How could these newcomers think they could succeed where ancient civilizations had failed? "The Krellians have a weakness," Phillips continued. "They share one mind across their entire species. Cut off the head and the body dies. Disrupt their communication and they become helpless." Morrison nodded. "Every species in this room fights the same way. Big fleets, straight lines, predictable tactics. The Krellians know how to beat that kind of fighting. They've done it 47 times. He pressed a button on his wrist device. A hologram appeared above the council floor. It showed human ships moving in ways that made no sense to the watching aliens. They split apart and came back together. They appeared and disappeared. They attacked from directions that should have been impossible. "Humans don't fight fair," Morrison said quietly. "We fight to win." In the viewing area above the main floor, 2 more humans watched the conversation. Tony Rivera was Earth's chief diplomat. He had black hair and kind eyes, but he understood that sometimes kindness was not enough. Next to him sat Kate Johnson, a blonde woman with sharp intelligence who served as humanity's representative to the galactic community. "Think they're buying it?" Rivera whispered. Johnson watched the alien faces carefully. "They're scared. Good. Fear will make them listen." On the main floor, Zexthari looked at the humans with desperate hope. "You truly believe you can save my people?" Morrison's expression grew serious. "Ma'am, we're not just going to save your people. We're going to send a message to every predator in this galaxy. Nobody messes with innocent civilians while Earth is watching." Colonel Harper looked up from her computer. "Admiral, I've got the tactical breakdown. The Krellians are using standard swarm formation with bioships bred for ramming attacks. They rely on overwhelming numbers and regenerating hulls." "Countermeasures?" Morrison asked. "Kinetic bombardment to break their formations. Electronic warfare to jam their hive communications. close-quarters combat teams to disable their command ships from inside. Harper's smile was as cold as her. Commanders, standard human doctrine should be more than sufficient. The alien leaders exchanged worried glances. These humans talked about war like other species talked about farming. They discussed violence with the same calm tone most people used for everyday conversations. War speaker Groth Manus leaned forward. His people were warriors, but even they found human attitudes toward combat unsettling. Admiral Morrison, the Krellians outnumber any force you could send by 100 to 1. How do you plan to overcome such odds? Morrison's smile grew wider. War speaker, humans have been fighting impossible odds since we climbed down from the trees. We've spent 10,000 years learning how to kill things bigger, stronger, and more numerous than us. The Krellians are just another predator. Dr. Phillips activated his own display. It showed detailed scans of Krellian biology. Their hive mind is transmitted through chemical signals in their atmosphere. Disrupt those signals, and individual Krellians lose the ability to coordinate. They become confused and panicked. You plan to use biological weapons? Asked Prime 7 from the Silicon Collective. We plan to use everything, Colonel Harper replied. Biological weapons, psychological warfare, electronic jamming, kinetic bombardment, stealth attacks, and good old-fashioned human stubbornness. The chamber fell silent again. The alien leaders were beginning to understand that they were looking at something new and frightening. These humans didn't just want to fight the Krellians. They wanted to destroy them completely. Ambassador Zexathari stepped forward. Her crystal body was glowing brighter now, filled with hope for the first time in months. What do you need from us? Nothing, Morrison said. Just stay out of our way and be ready to help refugees when this is over. When this is over? Counselor Yithmarin asked. Admiral, you speak as if victory is certain. Morrison looked directly at the Altarian representative. His expression was calm, but his eyes held something that made the alien step backward. Counselor, victory is certain. The only question is how much of the Krellian fleet will survive the experience. Kate Johnson stood up in the gallery. The Earth Federation will depart for the Valdorian system in 6 hours. Any species that wants to observe our methods is welcome to send ships. Just stay back far enough to avoid the debris field. As the humans filed out of the chamber, Tony Rivera noticed the expressions on the alien faces. Fear, confusion, and something else. Something that might have been relief. For the first time in galactic history, someone had answered a call for help with absolute confidence in their ability to provide that help. The monsters of Earth were going to war, and they were looking forward to it. Zexthari watched the humans leave and whispered a prayer to her ancestors. She had called for mercy, and something had answered. She just hoped it was mercy, and not something far more dangerous that happened to be on her side. The Galactic Council session ended with no formal votes or treaties. None were needed. Earth had made its intentions clear, and the galaxy would soon learn what those intentions meant in practice. In 6 hours, the most dangerous predator species in known space was going hunting. The Krellian horde was about to discover why humans were called the monsters of Earth. Captain Ben Carter stood on the bridge of the ESV Retribution and watched his crew prepare for battle. The ship was sleek and dark, built for hunting rather than defense. Every line of its design spoke of speed and deadly purpose. Around him, human voices called out reports and confirmations. These were not the careful, formal communications of other galactic species. These were the sharp, efficient words of predators preparing to strike. Status report, Commander Wells. Carter called to his second-in-command. Commander Sam Wells looked up from his tactical display. The screen showed dozens of green dots representing human soldiers throughout the ship. Each dot moved with purpose and confidence. All hunter teams are armed and ready, sir. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez has her infiltration squads prepared for zero-gravity insertion. The bugs won't know what hit them. Wells was a veteran of Earth's corporate wars. He had learned to fight in the asteroid belt where one mistake meant death in the vacuum of space. His calm voice hid the excitement he felt at finally having a real enemy to face. In the ship's war room, General Dan Baker studied holographic displays of the Krellian fleet. Baker was a short, stocky man with gray hair and scars on his hands from a dozen different conflicts. He had fought in Africa, South America, and the ice fields of Europa. Now he was preparing for humanity's first major battle among the stars. The key is psychological warfare, explained Dr. Grace Turner, the fleet's expert on alien minds. She was a tall woman with dark skin and intelligent eyes that seemed to see through everything. Other species fight for land, resources, or survival. Humans fight for ideas. Honor, justice, revenge. The Krellians have never faced an enemy that takes war personally. Baker nodded as he studied the tactical data. The bugs think in patterns. They follow chemical signals and respond to group commands. They expect enemies to fight the same way they do. We're going to show them something different. Sergeant Alex Murphy checked his assault armor one final time. The black suit was covered in equipment that would seem barbaric to most aliens. Explosive charges, cutting tools, and weapons designed for close combat. Murphy led the Void Walkers, soldiers who specialized in fighting inside enemy ships. They turned the emptiness of space itself into a weapon. Remember, Murphy told his team over the communication system, the Krellians think like insects. They follow orders from their queens and commanders. They break when their leadership is destroyed. We're going to introduce them to human creativity. His soldiers laughed grimly. They were volunteers from Earth's toughest military units. Marines who had fought in urban warfare, sailors who had served on submarines, pilots who had flown combat missions in Earth's atmosphere and in the vacuum between planets. Each one had trained for years to fight in conditions that would kill most aliens. In the medical bay, Dr. Julie Martinez prepared for casualties with the efficient brutality that characterized human military medicine. Other species treated their wounded with care and sent them home to recover. Humans patched up their soldiers and sent them back into battle. Martinez had served in field hospitals during Earth's last major war. She understood that sometimes saving lives meant being willing to cause pain. Captain Helen Davis commanded the stealth ship ESV Ghost Protocol. Her vessel was humanity's most advanced warship, equipped with technology stolen and improved from a dozen alien species. The ship could bend light around itself, making it invisible to most sensors. Davis was a former intelligence operative who had spent years learning alien technology. She knew how to make their own weapons work against them. Stealth systems are online, reported her technical officer, Lieutenant Chris Lee. Lee was a genius with electronics who had learned to hack alien computers by studying captured equipment. We can slip behind their lines without being detected, Davis smiled coldly. Good. Let's show these bugs what happens when predators hunt them in their own territory. The human fleet consisted of only 37 ships compared to the 1,000 vessels of the Krellian swarm. But each human ship carried something the galaxy had never seen before. Crews trained not just to fight, but to win at any cost. Soldiers who viewed warfare as an art form rather than a necessity. Admiral Morrison opened a communication channel to all ships. His voice carried to every human in the fleet. All vessels, this is Morrison. In 4 hours we jump to the Valdorian system. The enemy outnumbers us 26-1. They have more ships, bigger guns, and they've conquered 47 star systems. He paused for effect. Every human in the fleet was listening. They don't have what we have. They don't have the absolute refusal to accept defeat. They don't have 10,000 years of experience fighting the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. They don't have humanity's greatest weapon. What's our greatest weapon, sir? Asked a young ensign on the communication channel. Morrison's smile could be heard in his voice. Each other, son. And the knowledge that when someone asks for our help, we don't ask if we can win. We ask how badly we're going to hurt the enemy before they surrender. On the ESV Stormbreaker, Captain Mike Stone prepared his ship for its special mission. The Stormbreaker was designed to split apart into 7 smaller vessels during combat. Each section could operate independently, creating confusion among enemies who expected single ships to stay in one piece. Separation systems tested and ready, reported his engineering chief, Lieutenant Paula Green. Green was a former aerospace engineer who had helped design the ship's unique capabilities. We can divide into attack formation in 30 seconds once we reach the target zone. Stone nodded. His crew had trained for months to coordinate 7 different ship sections during combat. It was a technique that required human-level multitasking and individual decision-making. No other species in the galaxy could manage such complex tactics. In another part of the fleet, the ESV Titan's hammer loaded its special weapons. These were not the energy beams or particle cannons used by other species. They were kinetic missiles guided by human pilots willing to ram enemy ships if necessary. The concept horrified most aliens, but humans understood that sometimes the only way to guarantee victory was to be willing to die for it. Lieutenant Brad Wilson checked his fighter craft one final time. The small ship was barely big enough for one person, and carried enough explosives to destroy a vessel 10 times its size. Wilson was a volunteer like all the fighter pilots. He had joined the mission because he believed in protecting innocent people from monsters. "Target assignments are loaded," he reported to his squadron leader. "If the missiles don't work, we'll ram them manually." His squadron leader, Captain Janet Hayes, nodded approvingly. Hayes was a former test pilot who had survived more crashes than most people survived normal flights. She understood the mindset required for suicide missions. "Remember, boys and girls, we're not trying to die heroically. We're trying to make the enemy die unheroically." Throughout the fleet, similar preparations continued. Soldiers loaded weapons that other species considered too dangerous to use. Engineers prepared boarding pods designed to cut through enemy hulls like knives through paper. Medics stocked supplies for treating wounds that would be considered fatal by most galactic standards. Dr. Phillips reviewed his biological warfare preparations one final time. The chemical compounds he had developed would disrupt Krellian communication by interfering with their natural pheromones. Once released into an enemy ship's atmosphere, the chemicals would drive individual Krellians insane as they lost contact with their hive mind. "This is cruel," observed Lieutenant Commander Rachel Green, his assistant. She was a biologist who understood the effects of Phillips's weapons. Phillips looked at her with tired eyes. "Rachel, the Krellians dissolved entire families in acid while their children watched. They turned living people into food while keeping them conscious during the process. Cruelty is what we're fighting against, not what we're using." As the countdown to hyperspace jump continued, Admiral Morrison sent one final message to Earth. "Command, this is Admiral Morrison. The fleet is ready. We understand the stakes. If we fail, the galaxy learns that humanity makes empty promises. If we succeed, the galaxy learns what happens when someone threatens innocence while humans are watching." The response from Earth was simple. "Good hunting, Admiral. Show them what monsters look like when they're on the right side." 4 hours later, 37 human ships entered hyperspace, carrying the hopes of the Valdorian people and the fury of humanity toward their first galactic war. Behind them, Earth waited to learn if its children could back up their bold words with deadly action. The monsters were going hunting, and they were eager to meet their prey. Hordemaster Thraxanis looked out from his command ship at the burning planet below. Valdoria Prime was almost finished. The crystal cities were melting under the heat of his feeding ships. Soon another world would be consumed and his horde would grow stronger. The Krellian commander was massive even by his species standards. His black shell was covered in acid scars from 100 battles. His forearms moved constantly as he directed the orbital bombardment. Behind him, lesser Krellians scuttled back and forth, following the chemical commands that poured from his body. "Hive Commander," buzzed his tactical officer through pheromone signals. "We detect hyperspace signatures at the system edge. 37 ships approaching our position." Thraxanis's mandibles clicked with amusement. More refugees trying to save the dying crystal people. It happens sometimes. Weak species sending their pathetic fleets to rescue civilians. It never worked. "Standard intercept formation," he commanded. Chemical signals spread through his 1,000-ship armada. Each vessel moved into position with mechanical precision. The Krellian fleet was a thing of terrible beauty. Biomechanical ships that had been grown rather than built. Hulls that could repair themselves. Weapons that fired living ammunition. The enemy fleet translated into normal space exactly where Krellian sensors had predicted. 37 small ships against 1,000 larger ones. The tactical computer calculated the battle would last less than 10 minutes. Then everything went wrong. The lead ship simply vanished. One moment it was there on the sensors, the next it had disappeared completely. Thraxanis felt his first moment of confusion. Ships did not just disappear in normal space. Captain Carter watched his tactical display with cold satisfaction. The Krellian fleet was arranged in perfect geometric patterns, just like the intelligence reports had predicted. They were treating the human fleet exactly like any other galactic species. "Stealth systems holding steady," reported his technical officer. "They can't see us," Carter smiled. The ESV Retribution was using technology stolen from 6 different alien species and improved by human engineering. Light bent around the ship's hull, making it invisible to most sensors. "Weapons officer, target the command cluster in the center of their formation." Across the human fleet, similar surprises revealed themselves. The ESV Stormbreaker split into 7 pieces. each section targeting different parts of the Krellian formation. The aliens had never seen anything like it. Their tactical computers could not process a single ship becoming multiple independent vessels. Captain Stone coordinated his 7 ship sections with the ease of a conductor leading an orchestra. Alpha section target their left flank. Beta and Gamma hit their supply ships. Delta through Echo, find their command vessels and disable their communication arrays. The Krellians tried to respond, but their formation tactics were useless against enemies who refused to follow predictable patterns. They expected the human ships to charge forward in straight lines or maintain defensive positions. Instead, the humans seemed to teleport around the battlefield. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez pressed herself against the hull of a Krellian battleship as her infiltration pod cut through the alien metal. Around her, 5 other humans prepared for the most dangerous part of their mission. They were going inside an enemy vessel while it was still fighting. "Breach in 30 seconds, she whispered into her radio. "Remember, we're not here to capture anything. We're here to break things." The pod finished cutting and the humans poured into the Krellian ship. Rodriguez had expected alien corridors and strange architecture. What she found was worse. The ship was alive. Walls pulsed like heartbeats. The floor felt warm and soft under her boots. Worst of all, the air was thick with chemical signals that made her head spin. "Gas masks on," she ordered. "This atmosphere is designed to control their minds. It might mess with ours too." Sergeant Murphy led his team deeper into the ship. The Voidwalkers moved through the alien vessel like ghosts. They had trained in similar conditions on captured Krellian wreckage. Every human knew exactly where to find the ship's vital systems. "Rodriguez, take your team to the biocontrol center," Murphy commanded. "Parker, you're with me to the bridge. Remember, we're not trying to capture this ship. We're trying to send a message." The Krellians had never faced boarding attacks before. Their ships were sealed systems protected by toxic atmospheres. Their crews were connected by chemical signals that made infiltration seem impossible. They had no training for enemies who could function in their poisonous environment. Dr. Phillips's biological weapons turned their advantages against them. Aerosol compounds spread through the ship's ventilation system, disrupting the pheromone networks that connected individual Krellians to their hive mind. Suddenly, crew members found themselves thinking independently. For the first time in their lives, the experience drove many of them insane. Individual Krellians began attacking each other as their chemical programming broke down. Some curled into balls and stopped moving completely. Others ran through the corridors screaming in frequencies that hurt human ears. The ordered efficiency of the hive mind collapsed into chaos. "All human vessels, this is Morrison," the Admiral's voice carried across the fleet communication network. "Execute Thunder Protocol." Captain Helen Davis smiled as her stealth ship emerged directly inside the Krellian formation. The ESV Ghost Protocol had been hiding among the enemy ships for the past 10 minutes. Invisible to their sensors and close enough to touch their hulls. "Fire everything," she ordered. The Ghost Protocol's weapons were not designed for normal ship-to-ship combat. They were designed for terror. Kinetic harpoons shot out like spears, piercing Krellian hulls and then pulling enemy ships together in fatal embraces. Plasma cutters carved through formation lines, forcing vessels into collision courses with each other. But it was the psychological effect that truly devastated the Krellian horde. For the first time in their species' history, they faced an enemy that seemed to enjoy warfare. Human voices could be heard on captured radio channels, laughing and joking as they destroyed ship after ship. Lieutenant Brad Wilson guided his fighter craft toward the largest Krellian vessel. His missile had malfunctioned, but he still had one weapon left. His ship itself, loaded with enough explosives to crack a battleship's hull. "This is Wilson," he radioed to his squadron. "My missile's dead, but I've got a clear shot at their flagship. Going to manual targeting." Captain Janet Hayes tried to order him back, but Wilson had already cut his communication system. He pushed his fighter to maximum speed, aiming for the enemy command ship's bridge section. At the last second, he armed every explosive device on his craft and whispered a prayer for his family back on Earth. The explosion lit up the battlefield like a small star. When the light faded, the Krellian flagship was drifting dead in space, its command section completely destroyed. Hordemaster Thraxanis found himself trapped in the ruins of his bridge. Half of his crew was dead. The other half had gone mad from the disruption of their pheromone signals. Around him, the sound of human voices echoed through the ship's corridors as boarding parties systematically destroyed everything they found. A human soldier appeared at his broken viewport. The creature wore black armor and carried weapons that seemed designed to cause maximum pain. It looked directly at Thraxanes and spoke into a translation device. "This is Sergeant Murphy of the Terran Federation. Your fleet is broken. Your crews are dead or insane. You have one chance to surrender and live." Thraxanes tried to respond with chemical signals, but his pheromone glands had been damaged in the explosion. For the first time in his life, he had to think as an individual rather than part of the hive. The experience was terrifying. "What are you?" he managed to ask through a damaged voice synthesizer. Murphy's smile was visible through his helmet's faceplate. "We're the monsters that other monsters have nightmares about. We're what happens when someone threatens innocent people while humans are watching." The battle lasted 14 minutes. When it ended, 700 Krellian ships floated as wreckage in space. The survivors broadcast a single message to their homeworld before their communication systems died. "Do not engage the Terrans. They are not like other species. They are something else entirely." Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship and surveyed the destruction. Around him, his crew worked quietly to coordinate rescue operations for any surviving Valdorians on the planet below. "Casualty report," he requested. 17 humans wounded, 3 killed, reported Colonel Harper. "Enemy casualties estimated at 400,000 dead, 200,000 captured or missing." Morrison nodded grimly. The numbers were exactly what the tactical computers had predicted. Humans fought with such overwhelming efficiency that enemy casualties were always massive compared to their own losses. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," he ordered. "The Valdorian system is secure. All Krellian forces have been eliminated or captured. We're beginning humanitarian aid operations immediately." As human ships moved to help the survivors on Valdoria Prime, the galaxy received its first lesson in what happened when someone called for mercy, and the monsters of Earth answered. The age of easy conquest was over. The predators had found something that hunted them back. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from 200 species packed the Great Chamber, their voices creating a symphony of fear, anger, and confusion. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Zexthari, her crystal body still glowing with disbelief at what had happened in her home system. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice trembling through the translation systems. "The human fleet has not only saved my people, but has completely destroyed the Krellian presence in our region of space. In 6 standard days, they accomplished what our combined forces could not achieve in 6 years. The silence that followed was deafening. Every alien in the chamber was trying to process information that seemed impossible. The Krellian horde had been the galaxy's greatest nightmare for decades. They had consumed entire star systems without anyone being able to stop them. Now these newcomers from Earth claimed to have eliminated them completely. Warspeaker Grothmanus of the Thorian Empire shifted uncomfortably in his massive gravity chair. His people were the galaxy's most feared warriors, having conquered dozens of worlds through superior tactics and overwhelming force. But the reports from Valdorian space made no sense to him. "Ambassador Zexthari," his deep voice rumbled through the chamber. "Our intelligence reports are incomplete. What exactly did these humans do? How did 37 ships destroy a 1,000-vessel armada?" Admiral Morrison stepped forward and activated the chamber's main display system. 3-dimensional images filled the air above the assembly floor, showing recordings from the recent battle. The alien representatives watched in horrified fascination as human ships performed impossible maneuvers and attacked in ways that defied every known principle of space combat. Krellians fought like most galactic species. Morrison explained with the calm tone of a teacher instructing children. Predictable formations, standard tactics, reliance on superior numbers. Humans learned thousands of years ago that the only way to defeat a superior enemy is to become something they cannot understand. The recordings showed human soldiers fighting inside Krellian ships, adapting their tactics from moment to moment, using enemy equipment against its creators, and displaying a casual disregard for their own safety that seemed like madness to the watching aliens. Most disturbing of all was their apparent enjoyment of combat situations. Counselor Yithmarin of the Altarian Federation raised a shaking appendage. His species prided themselves on civilized behavior and diplomatic solutions. What he was seeing challenged everything he believed about proper conduct in warfare. "Admiral Morrison," he said, his voice high with stress. "Your forces appear to have deliberately targeted non-combatant vessels. The Krellian supply ships pose no direct military threat." "Why were they destroyed?" Captain Carter, who had commanded the lead assault ship, stepped up beside his admiral. His blue eyes were cold as winter ice as he looked at the Altarian representative. "Counselor, you're thinking like prey instead of a predator. Those supply ships weren't carrying food and equipment. They were filled with processed biomass from murdered Valdorian civilians." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Several alien representatives made sounds of disgust or horror. Carter continued speaking over the noise. "Every supply vessel we destroyed was a mobile slaughterhouse. The Krellians weren't just invading Valdorian space. They were turning living people into food while keeping them conscious during the process. We eliminated their ability to continue those war crimes. Permanently." Dr. Grace Turner moved to the front of the human delegation. Her dark face was serious as she activated her own data display. Charts and graphs appeared in the air, showing psychological analysis of Krellian behavior patterns. The hive mind structure that made the Krellians effective conquerors also became their greatest weakness, she explained. Once we disrupted their command hierarchy and communication networks, individual Krellians lost the ability to function. Many simply shut down mentally. Others turned on each other when they couldn't receive pheromone instructions from their leaders. Prime 7 of the Silicon Collective processed this information with obvious distress. The crystalline entity's harmonic frequencies showed deep concern as it spoke. "Dr. Turner, are you suggesting that humanity deliberately exploited psychological vulnerabilities to drive enemy combatants insane?" General Baker answered before Turner could respond. His gray hair and scarred hands spoke of decades of military experience. "We used every advantage available to protect innocent civilians. The Krellians showed no mercy to their victims. We showed them exactly the same courtesy they had extended to others." The alien observers whispered among themselves in dozens of different languages. The human delegation had just admitted to conducting psychological warfare on a scale never before seen in galactic history. More troubling still, they showed no shame or regret for their actions. In the gallery above the main floor, Tony Rivera and Kate Johnson watched the proceedings with careful attention. They understood that this moment would define humanity's relationship with the galactic community for centuries to come. Every word spoken here would be analyzed and discussed on thousands of worlds. Rivera stood and addressed the assembly. His voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "The question before this council isn't whether humanity's methods were excessive. The question is whether the galaxy wants protectors who are willing to do whatever it takes to defend innocent lives, or whether you prefer the old system where civilizations like the Valdorians simply disappear." Ambassador Zexthari's crystals flared with passionate light. She turned to face the assembled representatives, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. "My people exist because humanity answered our call for help. 50 billion Valdorians would be dead right now if these humans had not intervened. Whatever methods they used, they saved us from complete extinction. But not everyone was grateful." Counselor Tix Heron from the Peaceful Alliance of Worlds stood on his speaking platform. His species had evolved from herbivores and found all violence disturbing. "This council cannot approve of genocide as a solution to military problems. The complete destruction of Krellian forces sets a dangerous precedent." Captain Helen Davis, who had commanded the stealth operations during the battle, stepped forward. Her blonde hair was pulled back severely and her green eyes were hard as stone. "Counselor, with respect, you don't understand what genocide means. We destroyed military targets and command structures. Krellian civilians were left unharmed. But you eliminated their entire military capability," Tix Heron protested. "You destroyed their ability to defend themselves." Davis's smile was cold enough to freeze atmosphere. "Counselor, the Krellian military existed for one purpose: to consume other species. We eliminated a threat to galactic civilization. If that makes you uncomfortable, perhaps you should ask yourself why you're more concerned about the predators than their victims." War Speaker Groth Manus stood slowly. His massive form cast shadows across the chamber floor. The Thorian Empire had built its reputation on military conquest, but even they had limits. The Thorian Empire wishes to formally request a non-aggression pact with the Terran Federation. The announcement sent shockwaves through the assembly. The Thorians had never requested peace treaties before. They had only signed them after being defeated in battle. For them to voluntarily seek peace with humanity was unprecedented. Other species began making similar announcements. The Zephyrian Confederacy offered trade agreements. The hegemony of worlds requested mutual defense treaties. Within minutes, dozens of civilizations were competing to establish friendly relationships with Earth. Dr. Ryan Phillips watched the diplomatic stampede with quiet satisfaction. His biological weapons had proven devastatingly effective against the Krellians, but it was the psychological impact on other species that truly mattered. Fear was a powerful motivator for peace. "Interesting," he murmured to Colonel Harper. "They're more afraid of us than they were of the Krellians." Harper nodded. "The bugs were just another predator. We're something new, something that hunts predators." As the session continued, reports arrived from across the galaxy. The destruction of the Krellian horde had sent ripples through every star system. Species that had lived in fear for decades were suddenly free. Pirates and raiders were abandoning their activities rather than risk attracting human attention. But the most significant change was in the behavior of aggressive civilizations. The hegemony of Kor, which had been preparing to invade 3 neighboring systems, suddenly announced they were withdrawing their fleets and opening diplomatic negotiations instead. Admiral Morrison received a private communication from Earth Command during a brief recess. The message was simple but significant. Global approval rating for military intervention, 94%. The people of Earth are proud of their defenders. When the session resumed, Morrison stood to make a final statement. His words would be broadcast to every inhabited world in known space. Members of the Galactic Council, humanity did not ask to become involved in galactic warfare. We were content to explore space, establish trade relationships, and learn from older civilizations. But when Ambassador... 6 months after the destruction of the Krellian horde, the Galactic Council met for the most important session in its 1,000-year history. The Great Chamber was packed with representatives from every known species. They had come to discuss one document that had already changed the balance of power across the galaxy. Ambassador Rivera stood at the podium, holding a data tablet that contained humanity's formal declaration to the galactic community. His voice was calm but carried the weight of Earth's absolute determination. "The Terran protection doctrine," he began, reading from the document that had been transmitted to every inhabited world in known space. Article 1. Any species that commits genocide, destroys entire planets, or systematically murders civilian populations will be considered an enemy of humanity. The chamber was silent, except for the soft sounds of translation devices working in hundreds of languages. Every representative knew these words by heart. They had been discussed, analyzed, and debated on countless worlds since their release. Article 2. Such species will be given one opportunity to cease their hostile actions and make full reparations to their victims. Article 3. Failure to comply with Article 2 will result in the complete destruction of the aggressor's military forces and government structure. Kate Johnson stepped beside Rivera. Her blonde hair caught the chamber's lights as she looked directly at the assembled aliens. "The Terran Federation is not asking for approval of this doctrine. We are informing you that it is now in effect throughout known space." The chamber erupted in voices of protest, fear, and nervous agreement. The Terran Protection Doctrine was not a treaty or negotiated agreement. It was humanity's unilateral declaration that they would serve as the galaxy's self-appointed police force. Prime 7 of the Silicon Collective projected harmonic frequencies that translated as deep concern. "Ambassador Johnson, humanity is claiming the right to determine galactic law. No single species has ever presumed such authority." Dr. Grace Turner moved to the front of the human delegation. Her dark eyes swept across the assembled aliens as she spoke. "Prime 7, no single species has ever needed to assume such authority. The existing galactic order allowed entire civilizations to be destroyed, while everyone else watched from safe distances. The Valdorians asked for help and only humanity answered. That reality changes everything." War Speaker Groth Manus displayed the ritual scars of respect on his massive arms. Even the mighty Thorian Empire had been forced to acknowledge humanity's superior military capabilities. The Thorian Empire has studied every engagement between human forces and hostile entities over the past 6 months. In each case, the enemy was offered opportunities to surrender or withdraw peacefully. Those who chose to continue fighting were eliminated with unprecedented efficiency. The record supported his statement completely. The Zephyrian pirates, who had terrorized merchant shipping for 30 years, had been wiped out in a single coordinated attack after ignoring human warnings to cease their activities. The hegemony of Vash, notorious for enslaving primitive species, had watched their entire fleet reduced to floating debris when they refused to release their captives. Most shocking of all, the militant core empire had actually surrendered rather than face human military forces. A civilization that had conquered 17 star systems had chosen to disarm completely rather than test Earth's resolve. Captain Helen Davis, now commanding the Terran enforcement fleet, explained their operational methods to the assembly. Her stealth ships had become legends throughout the galaxy, appearing without warning to eliminate threats to civilian populations. "We don't conquer territory or claim resources," she said, her green eyes reflecting cold professionalism. "We identify threats to innocent people and eliminate those threats with extreme efficiency. The enemy's military forces, government structures, and ability to project power are destroyed. Their civilian populations are left unharmed but under the protection of allied local forces." Counselor Yithmarin struggled to understand this concept. His species approached all problems through careful negotiation and diplomatic compromise. "Captain Davis, you describe a form of warfare that serves no economic or territorial purpose. What does humanity gain from these interventions?" Admiral Morrison answered with the patient tone of someone explaining obvious facts to confused children. "Counselor, we gain something more valuable than territory or resources. We gain the knowledge that civilizations like the Valdorians can sleep safely at night. When species choose cooperation over conquest, the galaxy becomes a better place for everyone, including humanity." The philosophical implications troubled many representatives. Most galactic species fought for clear material goals: land, resources, strategic advantages. Humans seemed to fight for abstract concepts like justice and protection of the innocent. This made them unpredictable and dangerous in ways that traditional military powers were not. Ambassador Zexathari rose from her seat in the gallery. Her crystal form glowed brighter than it had since before the Krellian invasion. As spokesperson for the Alliance of Protected Worlds, she represented 17 species that had formally requested Earth's protection. "Honored representatives," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "The human approach to galactic security may seem extreme to those who have never faced extinction. But for those of us who have been saved by their intervention, the Terran protection doctrine represents the first real peace our peoples have known in centuries." Her words carried special weight because everyone in the chamber knew her story. The Valdorians had been hours away from complete extinction when humanity intervened. Now they were rebuilding their civilization under Earth's protective umbrella. Dr. Ryan Phillips presented statistical data that supported humanity's claims. Galactic piracy has decreased by 78% since the implementation of the protection doctrine. Aggressive military actions between species are down by 85%. Trade routes that were considered too dangerous to use are now operating normally. The numbers were undeniable. Fear of human intervention had created an unprecedented period of peace across known space. Species that had been enemies for centuries were suddenly finding diplomatic solutions to their conflicts, rather than risk attracting Earth's attention. But the cost of this peace troubled many observers. Lieutenant Commander Paula Green, serving as humanity's military analyst, explained the enforcement mechanisms that made the doctrine effective. Any species that violates the protection doctrine faces immediate military response from Earth forces. We don't issue warnings or negotiate terms. Aggressive action against civilians triggers automatic retaliation. The enemy military is destroyed completely, and their government is replaced with local leadership that agrees to peaceful coexistence. The cold efficiency of human justice frightened even their allies. Other species waged war with passion, anger, or desperate necessity. Humans conducted military operations with the same calm professionalism they might use for any other job. Tony Rivera addressed the final concerns of the assembly. The Galactic Council is welcome to vote on whether to officially recognize the Terran protection doctrine. But understand that this vote is a formality. Earth will continue enforcing our standards of civilized behavior regardless of your decision. The vote was called immediately. Representatives from 200 species cast their decisions electronically. The results appeared on the chamber's main display within minutes: unanimous approval. Not because every species agreed with humanity's methods, But because no one wanted to be classified as opposing the protection of innocent civilians, more importantly, no one wanted to risk being targeted by Earth's military forces. As the session concluded, Admiral Morrison transmitted a message directly to Earth Command. Mission accomplished. Humanity is no longer the new species trying to fit into existing galactic society. We are the species that every other civilization must account for in their planning. The response from Earth was immediate and approving. Understood, Admiral. The President and Global Council are proud of your achievements. Continue monitoring galactic affairs and enforcing the protection doctrine as needed. Captain Ben Carter, now serving as commander of humanity's Rapid Response Forces, reviewed intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Aggressive species were abandoning military campaigns. Pirates were finding legitimate employment. Even traditionally hostile civilizations were opening diplomatic channels rather than risk conflict. It's working, he reported to his staff. Fear of human intervention is creating more peace than 1,000 years of diplomatic negotiations ever achieved. In the months that followed, a strange new stability settled across the galaxy. Trade flourished under Earth's protection. Scientific cooperation reached unprecedented levels as civilizations no longer feared their neighbors. Cultural exchange expanded as species felt safe to interact with each other. The few attempts to challenge human authority ended quickly and decisively. The Syndicate of Malthor tried to continue their slave trading operations and found their entire fleet destroyed in a single day. The war clans of Zetera attempted to invade a neighboring system and discovered that their homeworld was under human occupation before their attack ships even reached their target.